Hi everyone. In today's video, I am going to show you 3 different techniques to make beautiful watercolored Christmas wreaths that you can then go ahead and use for Christmas cards or maybe some holiday decor. So in the first version, I'm going to show you how to use gold metallic paint to add some really pretty Christmassy accents to your wreaths. Then we are going to use some metallic paints on black watercolor paper to get those really cool silver leaves. And then finally, we are going to make a watercolor wreath and then decorate it with some sequins and ribbon just to add a funky little touch, just something new for 2021. Let's go ahead and get started with our first wreath. So I just used the inside of my painter's tape to get a nice circle. I find that if you start with a good base, your wreath is going to come out looking really nice. I am using a number 1 script brush. That's a silver velvet brush. And this brush I find is really good to use for making branches and then also for making little pine needles. So we're going to make a pine wreath to start. And I'm just mixing up my color here. So I'm just mixing up some brown. I think that's sepia. And I'm just going to start by just filling in where we want our branches to be. And they're going to have a little bit of a curve to them because they're like, little branches. And I'm going to go one on the inside and then stagger it and then add one to the outside. And this is going to give us the placement for where we then need to fill in our little pine needles. And this number 1 script brush is really, really great for these fine lines that you need for the branches and then for the little pine needles we're going to draw in. So I highly recommend it. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and use a small round brush as well. I'm going to just add some tiny little branches just coming off of some of those little larger branches we added just to give our wreath a little bit of more dimension there and to fill it out a bit more. And then once I get the branches in, we can go ahead and move on to adding our little pine needles, or I guess these could be like cedar leaves as well. Just any type of, I guess, evergreen that has like pointy little needles. That's the type of wreath we're making here. So I'm just mixing up some sap green with some of that sepia that I had used for the branches until I get a nice kind of warm olive green. And then I'm just going to add the needles on either side of those little branches and just move from the base of the branch towards the outside. So that's how we're going to get a nice little kind of pine needle shape there. So I start from the center and then I work my way outwards. So I start at the branch and then flick out and then do the same on the other side. And then that's what gives you that great effect of the little pine needles. And this number 1 script brush really, really helps to get those really fine lines. We're going to add some dimension now. So I just mixed up a darker green. So I think I took some sap green and then added some purple to it and maybe some blue just to get a deeper shade of green. And that deeper shade is just going to really help the wreath to start to pop. So having different values of the same color, you just see how that kind of makes it just start springing to life right away. So our left side of our wreath is starting to look a little bit more realistic and come into sharper focus, whereas the right side, which only has one color right now or one shade of green, it still is looks a little bit faded. So we're just going to add some darker shade here just to the pine needles there. And we're going to do that all around the wreath. And I might add in some extra little pine needles too if I see that there's a sparse place that's left open where I didn't draw a little branch. That's okay too. Like right there we did one. And I'm just going to fill in the wreath. And the only type of greenery that we're going to have on this wreath are going to be these little pine needles. We are going to also add some berries at the end, and we're also going to add some gold leaves with some metallic gold paint in a second. So let's just finish up adding in these darker tones for our pine needles, and now we can go ahead and add the berries. So I just have some red, some bright, I think that's just cadmium red, and I'm just going to add some little dots wherever there's a little open spot just to add some berries. And you can add single berries, you could add clusters to berries. Your berries can be bigger or smaller. It's up to you. It depends on what look you're going for. And I'm not being too precious here, so I'm not leaving any white space with the berries because they're really, really small. I'm just trying to kind of fill in these little sparse areas just to add another little item of interest to the wreath before we add our little gold leaves. So I have my metallic paints. So these are, I think, Fine Tech they're called. And if you're a card maker, you probably definitely have these metallic paints already. I'm just using a small, I think this is a number 2 brush, and I'm just going to paint in some small leaves, a number 2 round brush, that is. So because we're making fatter leaves for the little gold accents, the script brush we were using originally isn't really the best tool for that. So just take whatever round brush you have, like a 4 would work, a 6 would work. If you want bigger leaves, it's really up to you. And I'm just kind of adding some little gold leaves in the background there wherever I have some white space. And it's just going to give a little bit of a pop. I also mixed up a little bit of a darker red just to add a little pop of color on top of those berries, so that we also have 2 different values of red there, just to kind of make them pop out against the other elements of the wreath. And then once we finish that up, we can add a sentiment. So whatever holiday sentiments you have, feel free to add. You could also handwrite it in as well. I don't have nice handwriting, so that's why I'm using a stamp that I've just had forever. Just says Happy Holidays, and I just use some black ink for that. And then I have a fog base that is fog colored, and then that is going to complete our first wreath card. So nice and simple. I was probably able to get that done in about 20 minutes. And now we can move on to our black watercolor version. So I have my Fine Tech paints again. And I started with the circle using a white pencil this time, so it shows up against the black. And I'm just using some of that silver metallic paint. And I think this is a number 4 round brush. And we're just going to kind of draw on these little leaves, just little ovals, just going all around the wreath. And I'm just going to stagger them. So I'll put one on the inside, and then a little bit beneath that, I'll put one on the outside, and just keep going in that pattern. And then once we have our first layer of wreaths, I just put a little water into my brush just so I got a lighter shade of that silver, more translucent shade. And I'm just going to go in and fill in the little empty spaces in between the darker leaves. So now we have 2 different shades going in our little wreath. I'm going to take my script brush again, and we're going to add some little pine needles. And I'm just going to use that same technique that we did for the first wreath. So I just draw the branch, and then on either side, I just have the little pine needles coming out from either end. And I'm just picking wherever I see a little bit of open space. I'm just going to add those little gold pine needles there. And it just adds such a nice pop, I think, to this little wreath. I love how that looks. I think metallics are great for Christmas. And then we are going to add some little gems. So I have, or little sequins. So these are just little clear crystal sequins. And we're just going to add those to have a little bit of an accent. I'm going to show you another version of this wreath where instead of adding the gems, I just added a whole bunch of dots with a white gel pen, and that actually ended up looking a lot brighter. So if you want a card that's really, really bright, you might try the white dots, and I'll show you an example of that in a second so you can see. Otherwise, you can use little gems, or you can use sequins like I'm using here. And I'm just going to put that onto a white card base and add a sentiment. So this is a sentiment I think I got from Simon Said's stamp. It was just ready made, and I just popped it up on some foam tape. And then there is that version with the white dots. You see how cool that looks? So it's another real easy way to just make a really fun metallic wreath on black watercolor paper. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we are going to make our third version. So this is going to be the version that we watercolor the leaves, and then we add some sequins to decorate it. So I'm just taking some washi tape here and to make the wreath circle in the center, and then I'm just going to stagger my leaves just like we did for the last version on either side, and just kind of work my way around and fill in any open spots. And I just kind of go one leaf on the inside, one leaf on the outside, stagger them, and then just keep making my way around until the wreath looks pretty full. And now it looks pretty full. So now I'm just going to add some little branches where it looks like there would be some branches kind of holding the leaves together. You can skip this part too if you like. I just wanted to have a little bit of a bleed on my final watercolor wreath, so that's why I did that. And then for the sequins, I just kind of pulled out some sequins that I had that I thought worked well with the shade of green that we have for the wreath. And then I'm just adding little dots of glue and then adding the sequins with my jewel picker here. And just going to work my way around and around. I'm going to start with a layer of large sequins, and then I'm going to fill in around those large sequins with some of the smaller ones that are in this little sequin mix I have. So this is a great stash buster project. Just go, and see what sequins you have, what little packs you have, and just have lots of fun and decorate. And, if you have a sequin pack that you want to use that wouldn't work well with green leaves, then, make your wreath whatever color that you want that would go nice with the sequins. You could also do this technique on the black watercolor paper like we had just done with the second version. So lots of different ways to have fun with this technique. So I'm just going to finish that up, and this probably took maybe about 10 or 15 minutes to place all the sequins. So it's a little bit of a labor of love, but I think the finished product is worth it in the end. It just looks nice and sparkly and just kind of special. And then I'm going to pop up my little focal panel there on some foam tape and then add it to a fog colored card base. Add my little sentiment. Again, this is one of the ready-made sentiments from Simon Says Stamp. And then I thought we could add a little ribbon. So I had a little bit of red ribbon. I just tied it in a bow, and I'm just going to attach it with some glue there. And I just love that all the dimension that this card has. I love that it's watercolor, but then it also has some sequins. It also has some ribbon as well. So lots of fun accents there. Thanks so much for watching, and I really hope that you give some of these techniques a try. They're super fun and make beautiful holiday cards. Have a great day, and I will see you again soon in another video.